It started like any great car story: an old fiberglass body, a strange trade involving 3 cars, and a family with a passion for rare vehicles. But behind the hood, there's a much deeper story. At the center of it is Wayne Carini, a name that's become synonymous with classic car restoration. Known for his hit show Chasing Classic Cars, Wayne has built a reputation over decades as a master restorer, a savvy dealer, and one of the most trusted figures in the automotive world. But even the most respected names can find themselves caught in unexpected controversy. What happens when trust, perhaps the most valuable currency in the classic car market, is suddenly questioned? In recent years, Wayne Carini and his business, F40 Motorsports, have faced multiple legal challenges, including high-profile lawsuits involving rare and expensive vehicles. From disputed ownership of a 1934 Pierce Arrow to an angry Lamborghini buyer and a missing 6-figure luxury package, these stories reveal just how fragile credibility can be in a market built on passion and paperwork. In this video, we dive into the legal troubles and controversies that tested Wayne Carini's reputation, and explore what they reveal about the risks and realities of the vintage car industry. For decades, Wayne Carini has been one of the most recognizable faces in the classic car world. With his signature mustache, polished demeanor, and encyclopedic knowledge of vintage automobiles, Wayne became a household name through his long-running television series, Chasing Classic Cars. Unlike many in the reality TV space, Wayne didn't chase drama. He chased history, craftsmanship, and authenticity. His passion for automobiles wasn't just for show. It was real, and it was lifelong. Wayne grew up immersed in car culture. His father, Bob Carini, was a respected restorer in his own right, and from a young age, Wayne was learning how to bring old machines back to life. That early exposure gave him a reverence for the past and an appreciation for detail, values that would shape his future career. Over time, Wayne turned that passion into a business empire. Through F40 Motorsports, his Connecticut-based dealership and restoration shop, Wayne built a reputation for finding, restoring, and selling some of the most desirable cars in the world. Collectors, museums, and car enthusiasts all over the globe came to trust Wayne, not just because of his skill, but because of his honesty. In an industry often plagued by inflated values, unclear histories, and questionable sellers, Wayne stood out as a figure of transparency and credibility. His on-screen persona matched the real-life man, calm, knowledgeable, and devoted to doing right by his clients. But even for someone with a sterling reputation, the road isn't always smooth. The classic car world is built on trust, and when that trust is even slightly shaken, the consequences can be far-reaching. As Wayne would soon learn, it only takes one deal gone wrong to call decades of goodwill into question, especially when legal action and public scrutiny enter the equation. What started as a seemingly clean transaction quickly turned into a tangled legal mess, one that would pull Wayne Carini and his business, F40 Motorsports, into the middle of a dispute that spanned continents and nearly a decade. After the rare 1934 Pierce Arrow Coupe resurfaced in 2017, Australian collector Robert Richmond, who had originally paid for the car in 2010, discovered it had been quietly sold again without his knowledge. Frustrated and determined to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his, Richmond filed a lawsuit in 2018 naming Wayne Carini, F40 Motorsports, and other parties involved in the car's handling and sale. To understand how Wayne became part of this controversy, it's important to look at how classic car transactions typically unfold. When Wayne was contacted to appraise the Pierce Arrow, he was acting in his usual professional capacity, evaluating a rare and valuable vehicle based on condition, provenance, and market trends. At the time, he had no reason to suspect anything was wrong. The seller, Gary Dixo, had provided legitimate-looking documentation showing ownership, which Wayne, like most professionals in the industry, took at face value. Based on his inspection, Wayne valued the car between $110,000 and $120,000, and when the opportunity arose to purchase it, he did. But what Wayne didn't know, and couldn't have easily discovered, was that the ownership documents were fraudulent. Dixo had allegedly manipulated the paperwork, presenting himself as the rightful owner even though the vehicle had never been legally transferred from Richmond. The documents were convincing enough to clear the basic checks, but the legal ownership trail was broken. This detail would later become the centerpiece of the lawsuit and a painful reminder of how even seasoned experts can fall victim to bad actors when documentation is forged. Though Wayne acted in good faith, the law doesn't always excuse ignorance. The lawsuit accused all involved parties of wrongful sale and possession of stolen property, sparking a deep investigation into the Pierce Arrow's convoluted history. According to court filings reviewed by the Hartford Courant, the judge determined that Wayne had not knowingly engaged in any wrongdoing. However, as the final buyer of the disputed car, he was still legally entangled and required to help facilitate financial restitution in order to resolve the matter. This marked a critical turning point, not just for the case, but for Wayne's career. For a man known for his ethical approach to business, being dragged into a lawsuit involving fraud, improper ownership, and international claims was both shocking and damaging. Despite his innocence, the association alone was enough to raise eyebrows in an industry that places an enormous premium on trust. The lesson was clear. In the world of classic cars, good faith isn't always good enough, not when the paperwork isn't bulletproof. While the courts ultimately found that Wayne Carini had not committed any wrongdoing in the Pierce Arrow case, the damage to his reputation was already in motion. In the tightly knit world of classic car collecting, where handshakes are as binding as contracts, and trust is often valued more than a signature, perception is everything. And for Wayne, someone who had spent his life cultivating an image of integrity and expertise, even an unintentional entanglement in a lawsuit had serious consequences. The very idea that Wayne's dealership, F40 Motorsports, had been linked to a car with fraudulent ownership papers shook the confidence of clients and collectors. It wasn't just about legality, it was about credibility. To the outside world, especially those unfamiliar with the case's details, it appeared that one of the industry's most respected names had been involved in the sale of a disputed vehicle. Even though the judge confirmed that Wayne acted in good faith, he was still required to participate in a financial resolution to help settle the matter, a fact that, for some, blurred the lines between guilt and responsibility. The media attention, though not tabloid level, further amplified the problem. Coverage from reputable sources like the Hartford Courant made the case public knowledge and invited speculation from collectors, dealers, and online communities. Forums and comment sections began to light up with debates, not about whether Wayne was guilty, but about how this could have happened on his watch. In a world where reputation travels at the speed of social media, the backlash didn't need to be loud to be impactful. It just needed to exist. Wayne's own words in interviews reflected the sobering reality of the situation. He acknowledged how easy it is to fall into legal traps when relying on documentation that seems legitimate. You can't always know the full history of a car, he said, but you rely on the documents as proof. It was an honest and telling statement, revealing just how vulnerable even top-level professionals are in a system where a single forged title can throw everything into question. Beyond Wayne's personal brand, the case exposed a broader problem within the classic car industry: a lack of standardized verification practices. Many transactions, especially involving older vehicles, depend on a patchwork of original titles, handwritten bills of sale, or international paperwork, some of which are difficult, if not impossible, to verify completely. Wayne's situation became a real-world example of what can go wrong when trust is placed in faulty documentation, serving as a wake-up call to everyone in the trade. So, while Wayne emerged from the lawsuit legally cleared, the cost to his image and the confidence of some clients was undeniable. The incident didn't dismantle his career, but it forced a reckoning, both within his business and across the industry, about how fragile trust can be and how quickly it can unravel. Though the court system had ruled that Wayne Carini acted in good faith, the court of public opinion is rarely as forgiving or as patient. The Pierce Arrow case became more than just a legal dispute. It became a moment of reckoning for how the classic car industry handles its most valuable currency, trust. And for Wayne, whose image was tied so closely to transparency and professionalism, the optics were hard to ignore. The media, though generally restrained in tone, amplified the core issue. A rare car was sold under questionable ownership, and a high-profile figure like Wayne was involved, even if unknowingly. For a man often viewed as a steward of authenticity, this narrative was uncomfortable. Headlines didn't accuse Wayne of fraud, but the constant mention of his name alongside words like lawsuit, ownership dispute, and legal entanglement created a cloud of doubt. When your entire brand is built on credibility, even indirect associations can do lasting damage. The impact of that doubt was felt almost immediately across online communities and collector circles. On automotive forums, discussion threads dissected every detail of the case. Some users defended Wayne's reputation, pointing to his decades of honest work and his lack of malicious intent. But others weren't as charitable, raising tough questions about how a respected dealer could have missed such a significant red flag. In these circles, the question wasn't whether Wayne was guilty, it was whether he was still careful enough to be trusted. What made things worse was the timing. The collector car market had been experiencing a surge in popularity, with prices on the rise and new buyers entering the space, many of them less familiar with the unwritten rules of the trade. For these newer collectors who relied heavily on reputations and online reviews, hearing that even Wayne Carini could be caught up in a title dispute was unsettling. If someone like Wayne could be duped, what chance did they have? This incident exposed a deep vulnerability in the classic car world. The process of verifying ownership is often pieced together through decades-old records, handwritten bills of sale, or documentation that predates digital databases. It's a system that largely operates on trust, and that trust can be manipulated. Wayne's case put a national spotlight on the need for stricter verification standards and on the risks that come with assuming that paperwork equals truth. Even though Wayne had no ill intent, the backlash forced a sobering industry-wide reflection. Dealers, appraisers, and restoration shops began reevaluating their own protocols. Behind the scenes, conversations shifted from "Can this car be sold?" to "Can it be proven beyond a doubt that it should be sold?" The case didn't just challenge Wayne's reputation, it challenged the way business had been done for decades. While the Pierce Arrow lawsuit brought questions about ownership verification and legal responsibility to the forefront, another dispute from 2011 quietly raised a very different but equally important concern: customer service. This time, it wasn't about titles or fraud. It was about communication, follow-through, and the expectations of high-end buyers. The issue centered around the sale of a 2007 Lamborghini Gallardo, a sleek and powerful supercar that was listed for sale through F40 Motorsports, Wayne Carini's well-known dealership. What made this particular listing stand out wasn't just the car. It was the inclusion of an ultra-rare luxury luggage package, valued at an estimated $88,000. For collectors of exotic cars, especially Lamborghinis, limited edition accessories like this aren't just add-ons, they're status symbols, critical to maintaining the car's collector value. According to the buyer, that high-value package was a key reason for the purchase. But when the vehicle was delivered, the buyer was shocked to find that the luggage package was nowhere to be found. What followed was a frustrating and protracted series of emails, calls, and escalating complaints. According to the buyer's own account, posted on Lamborghini Talk, a popular automotive forum, F40 Motorsports was unresponsive, offering only vague updates and repeated delays in resolving the issue. Weeks stretched into months, and despite repeated reassurances that the matter would be handled, the promised items never arrived. As time dragged on, the buyer finally took steps toward legal action. Only then did the dealership respond decisively. The situation was resolved out of court, with the luggage package and a missing spare key sent via FedEx. On paper, the conflict had a clean resolution, but in reality, the damage was already done. The buyer, though made whole, walked away with a sense of frustration and disappointment, not because of a financial loss, but because of how poorly the situation had been handled. For a business like F40 Motorsports, which thrives on elite clientele, personalized service, and reputation, this kind of misstep was more than just a bump in the road. It exposed underlying cracks in the dealership's customer care process. In the world of exotic and collector cars, where transactions often involve 6 or 7 figures, clients expect white-glove service, fast communication, and flawless attention to detail. When those expectations aren't met, trust can erode fast. Although Wayne Carini personally intervened to help resolve the matter, his involvement came late in the process. That delay raised further concerns about how much oversight he maintained over day-to-day operations and whether the dealership was struggling to keep up with the demands of its growing client base. For many fans and collectors, Wayne's brand wasn't just about cars. It was about craftsmanship, integrity, and a personalized boutique experience. The Gallardo case challenged that narrative. While this incident didn't generate the same media buzz as the Pierce Arrow lawsuit, it quietly circulated in online communities. And in many ways, that kind of peer-to-peer critique, shared in forums and collector groups, can be even more damaging than headlines. It reinforced a perception that F40 Motorsports, though reputable, may have been stretched too thin. And in the luxury car market, perception often equals reality. Although the Gallardo luggage dispute was settled quietly and out of court, the damage to customer perception lingered. For clients of F40 Motorsports, a dealership known for dealing in rare Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and vintage collectibles, every small misstep feels large, especially when trust and precision are expected at every stage. The buyer may have eventually received the luggage package and spare key, but the experience of being ignored, delayed, and forced to escalate painted a less flattering picture of how the dealership operated behind the scenes. More than just a one-off mistake, the Gallardo incident added weight to a growing narrative that F40 Motorsports may have been struggling to keep up with its own success. As demand for classic and exotic cars surged in the early 2000s and 10s, and as Wayne Carini's profile rose thanks to chasing classic cars, F40 grew from a respected boutique dealer into a nationally recognized name. But that growth came with challenges, namely the challenge of scaling quality and service without sacrificing personal attention. Collectors began to take notice. On several car forums, clients and enthusiasts started to describe F40 as a place where the cars were top-notch, but the service sometimes fell short. One forum member, claiming to be a former customer, described the dealership as trustworthy but overwhelmed, noting that while they had no reason to doubt Wayne's character, small errors and delayed responses had become common. This wasn't an accusation of fraud. It was a warning sign that something was slipping. In the luxury and collector car world, A brand is only as strong as its consistency. Clients paying 6 or 7 figures for vehicles expect more than just a transaction. They expect an experience. When that experience begins to falter, word spreads fast. And in an industry driven by referrals, forums, and reputation, even a few public complaints can have a disproportionate impact. For Wayne Carini, the challenge wasn't just dealing with isolated issues, it was dealing with how those issues began to connect in the minds of clients and fans. The Pierce Arrow lawsuit had already cast a shadow over F40's title verification processes. Now, the Gallardo case was casting doubt on its customer service and communication standards. Separately, each case might have been manageable. But together, they began to shape a broader concern. Was F40 Motorsports losing its grip under pressure? Wayne's brand had always been built on integrity, expertise, and personal care. These recent controversies, though resolved, threatened to chip away at those pillars. And as the classic car market grew more competitive and digitally connected, the margin for error was shrinking fast. In the rarefied world of classic and exotic car collecting, reputation isn't just important, it's everything. While Wayne Carini had long stood as a beacon of trust and craftsmanship, the ripple effects of the Pierce Arrow lawsuit and the Lamborghini Gallardo dispute began to subtly shift how he and F40 Motorsports were perceived. Though he was cleared of wrongdoing and had taken steps to resolve customer issues, the seed of doubt had been planted, and in a market this sensitive, that alone was enough to cause damage. Collectors began having different conversations. Instead of asking, "What cars is Wayne working on next?" they were wondering, "How did that title issue slip through?" Or, "Why did that Gallardo buyer have to threaten legal action to get a response?" These weren't accusations. They were hesitations. And in the world of high-dollar car deals, hesitation is costly. A pause in trust can lead a client to walk away from a deal, or worse, take their business elsewhere. What made matters more complicated was the changing nature of the car collecting world itself. As more buyers entered the market, particularly from younger generations and international backgrounds, there was a growing emphasis on transparency, digital documentation, and verified provenance. Legacy dealerships that had thrived on personal relationships and verbal agreements were suddenly under pressure to professionalize their systems, and any sign of outdated processes or sloppy oversight could be a red flag. In that context, Wayne's entanglement in ownership disputes and communication breakdowns wasn't just a personal or operational issue, it became a cautionary tale for the entire industry. Publications like Auto Week and Sports Car Market began referencing the Pierce Arrow case as an example of why title verification and due diligence are no longer optional. And while these articles didn't villainize Wayne, they did highlight the risks even experienced professionals face in a rapidly evolving marketplace. Online communities, too, were shifting. Forums like Ferrari Chat, Lamborghini Talk, and ClassicCars.com began seeing threads where users shared stories. Not just about Wayne, but about the growing need for modern safeguards in a nostalgic business. The tone wasn't hostile, but it was wary. And that wariness, especially when it reaches collectors and brokers at the top of the market, can quietly reshape reputations over time. Wayne still had supporters, many of them. People who had done business with him, watched his show, or admired his restorations continued to defend his character. But even among them, there was an acknowledgement that something had changed. F40 Motorsports, once viewed as nearly untouchable, was now seen as fallible. And in a world where clients often base decisions on subtle reputational cues, fallibility can mean lost opportunities. It wasn't the end of Wayne Carini's credibility, but it was a turning point. From here forward, he would need to do more than build beautiful cars. He would need to rebuild trust in an industry that never forgets a misstep. In the wake of mounting scrutiny and public doubt, Wayne Carini was faced with a crucial decision: either allow the controversies to define his legacy or take control of the narrative by enacting real, lasting change. Known for his resilience and commitment to doing things the right way, Wayne chose the latter. While the Pierce Arrow lawsuit and Gallardo customer dispute revealed painful vulnerabilities, they also exposed clear areas for improvement inside F40 Motorsports, and Wayne wasted no time addressing them. One of the first things he did was reevaluate and strengthen the dealership's documentation and verification process. Until then, like many in the classic car industry, F40 Motorsports often relied on the accuracy of provided titles, bills of sale, or third-party appraisals. But after the Pierce Arrow fiasco, Wayne understood that good faith wasn't enough anymore. F40 began implementing multi-step verification protocols, including deeper title research, tighter chain of ownership reviews, and cross-checking records through legal and insurance databases before any transaction was finalized. These weren't just procedural tweaks. They represented a philosophical shift. The business was moving from a handshake and paper era into one of compliance, audit trails, and bulletproof documentation. The reforms also extended to internal training. Staff were brought up to speed on identifying red flags in ownership histories, navigating overseas paperwork, and improving customer transparency when a car's provenance wasn't entirely clear. Just as important was Wayne's effort to fix what had quietly eroded during F40's rise to fame: customer communication. After the Gallardo incident, Wayne personally stepped in to overhaul how customer service inquiries were handled. He established stricter response time goals, ensured that post-sale follow-ups were built into the workflow, and added new client support roles to ensure no buyer felt ignored or left in the dark. These weren't publicized reforms. Wayne didn't issue a press release or hold a press conference. But clients and industry insiders began to notice the change. Cars listed by F40 were now accompanied by clearer documentation, detailed condition reports, and, most importantly, a renewed commitment to transparency. Wayne even began to speak more openly in interviews and at automotive events about the lessons learned. He never deflected blame. Instead, he owned the reality of what had happened and emphasized the importance of learning from it. In doing so, he quietly sent a message to the industry: mistakes may happen, even to the best, but what matters is how you respond. And Wayne's response wasn't just about salvaging reputation. It was about preserving the integrity of the business he'd spent a lifetime building. For collectors who had started to waver, these reforms were reassuring. For new clients, they provided confidence. And for Wayne himself, they served as a personal and professional evolution. Proof that legacy isn't about being perfect, but about continuously striving to be better. The challenges faced by Wayne Carini and F40 Motorsports didn't happen in a vacuum. In fact, they exposed what many in the collector car industry had known, but rarely discussed openly: that the world of classic and exotic cars, for all its glamour and passion, is built on a delicate foundation of trust, paperwork, and personal integrity. When any one of those falters, the entire system can be shaken. And no one, not even the most respected professionals, is immune. Wayne's legal and customer service controversies, particularly the Pierce Arrow lawsuit and the Lamborghini Gallardo dispute, became case studies in what happens when industry norms meet modern expectations. As highlighted by automotive legal expert John Dryas in Sports Car Market, disputes like these reinforce the importance of due diligence, not as a best practice, but as a necessity. Dryas emphasized that title history, ownership verification, and buyer-seller communication are more than just administrative steps. They're the pillars that support every transaction in this multi-million-dollar space. And while Wayne was far from the only dealer to face these kinds of issues, his public profile ensured that his cases sparked broader reflection. Collectors, auction houses, and boutique dealers began revisiting their own protocols, reevaluating risks, and prioritizing transparency. If nothing else, Wayne's missteps served as a wake-up call for an industry that had become too comfortable with informal traditions in an increasingly regulated, high-stakes marketplace. But perhaps the most important takeaway isn't about processes or paperwork, it's about character. Wayne Carini didn't deny, deflect, or disappear. He confronted the issues head-on, implemented meaningful change, and owned the narrative, even when it hurt. That kind of accountability is rare, and in a community that values authenticity above all else, it carries weight. Wayne's legacy, therefore, isn't defined by the controversies he faced. It's defined by how he responded to them. He continues to run F40 Motorsports with renewed purpose. He still appears at shows and industry events, and he remains a trusted voice in a world where reputations are fragile and mistakes can be unforgiving. His story is a reminder that even seasoned professionals stumble, but true credibility comes from how you pick yourself back up. In the end, Wayne Carini's name still carries meaning, not because he's perfect, but because he's proven that integrity isn't about never making mistakes. It's about never hiding from them.